Hey guys, it's Nathan. This is episode number 24 of The Nathan Seaward Show.
The Nathan Seaward Show. Personal conversations with powerful men.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Back from a couple of weeks off. I had some issues with some guests. One had a family emergency and couldn't make the interview. And I've just been absolutely swamped with work and coaching conversations and everything. So I couldn't really catch up. So it means I've missed a couple of weeks of episodes. But thanks. I hope you missed me. And thanks for coming back again. As always, thanks for sharing the show around. Thanks for telling your friends about it and getting them involved. If you're a coach or a therapist, thanks for sharing the show with your clients. I know it's a great support tool to listen into these conversations as a support to someone that's on a coaching journey. And I really appreciate it. So thank you. Not much to report on my end. I've been just flat out still doing 100 free coaching conversations. I think I'm up to number 30 or something like that. And it's been incredible. I've just had so many great conversations with men, women, old, young, Americans, Australians, Kiwis, coaches, non-coaches, people from all over the place. And it's been amazing. Some people just starting out on their personal development journey. Some people well and truly into it and just looking for a couple of little tips to help them out. But I've had some amazing conversations and I've really, really enjoyed it. Common themes, something that's been there for me, and maybe I'm just seeing it in other people, it's highly likely, but I'm noticing that a lot of people are focused on doing. You know, people want to do more and they want to know what they should do and am I doing enough and what's my purpose? What should I be doing with my life? And I've just really come to realize, over the last probably year or so that it's really about who we're being. It's not about what we're doing. So I haven't been answering these people's questions when they say, what should I do? I refuse to answer it. And I say, well, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be first? How do you want to be? Who are you? Who are you and who do you want to be? Which has been such an interesting exploration. I'm a firm believer in affirmations. I do a lot of affirmations, and one of my affirmations is that I am enough. So it's like the first thing I say to myself every morning is I am enough. That's who I want to be. I want to be enough. If I don't believe I'm enough until I do something, there's not going to be a lot of joy in that. So I really focus on what I want to be. I've mentioned this before, I think, but in the Western world, we kind of think that we need to do something, but we're often actually trying to be someone or become someone through that doing. So if I was to change jobs, or if I was to make more money, or if I was to get healthy or fit, that's the stuff I want to do. But really what I want to be is free. I want to be financially free. I want to be happy. I want to be proud of myself. I want to be content. I want to be fulfilled. I want to actually feel, like I've made it for once. So we're actually trying to become someone through doing. So my question always is, how can we shortcut the process and just be that now? How can you create some new beliefs that you are free? I am free. I am enough. I am love. I'm in flow. All these beautiful things. So that's something I've been encouraging a lot of the people I've been speaking to, is just focus on who you want to be. An expert at that is my guest, Leo Babauta, who's on the show today. Leo is the creator of one of the biggest personal development blogs in the world, zenhabits.net. And Leo's cool. He doesn't keep track of how many readers he has anymore, because he was finding that he was getting stuck in that ego trap of wanting more readers. But he estimates it's over 1 million readers now, which is absolutely phenomenal to have that kind of impact and influence on all those people's lives. But you can see why once we started having a conversation. Leo has such a beautiful presence about him. He's kind of got this innocence, this fun, this openness, this vulnerability, and this real commitment to helping people to grow and develop. And he's been on the journey himself from growing up in Guam, which you'll hear about. Leo he has 6 kids, so a huge family. He was a smoker. He was overweight. The bills were piling up. He wasn't making enough money to pay them. And so he really started the blogs, Zen Habits, out of trying to overcome his own problems and just writing about that and some of the things that he found helpful. So now Leo's big goal is to help people change their struggle into joy, how to find joy and fun and love and fulfillment and gratitude within your struggles, within the things that you find hard and that you're struggling with. So you're going to love this conversation. I had so much fun with Leo, and yeah, I really hope you get a lot out of this. As always, I start the conversation asking about his upbringing in Guam, and I really hope you enjoy this very personal conversation with the powerful Leo Babauta.
My dad is a native islander from Guam, and my mom is an American from Wisconsin. Her family's from Wisconsin, so she came there when she was young, and they had me. So I'm a mixed breed, but I was born in the States. Spent most of my life on Guam, but back and forth between Guam and like California, Washington, Portland, and but almost all my adult life was spent on Guam. All my formative years, and then even as I had a family, I got married, had kids, got divorced, got married again, had more kids, and so now we have like a mixed family of 6 kids. Half of them are adults now. But yeah, we're from Guam, and we left Guam in 2010, took the whole family, sold everything, had like a backpack each on our backs, and moved to San Francisco. And so we live in Northern California now. But yeah, most of my life was spent on Guam.
And what defines growing up in Guam? Like, is that a time you look back on fondly?
Yeah. So I have, I told you about the different sides of me. I have a great family on my mom's side. And so I got that like kind of American culture in the tropics.
Yeah.
But I also have my dad's side. And that was a very different experience because the Guam has a very unique culture that is mixed with like Spanish colonial influences, and we're all Catholic. But at the same time, there's American influences for more than 100 years now. We have our native islander. We were occupied by the Japanese for during World War II, and so there's still some bitterness about that. But we also have some of their contributions. So it's like this mix that is so unique, and it really influenced who I am. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing growing up on Guam.
Yeah, really interesting. And are you quite connected to that native culture, like your dad's side at all?
I think like a lot of mixed ethnicity people, I'm one of them. There's always this sense that, well, at least for me, there's a sense that you're not quite a part of it. A part of either side. Right. At least that was my experience. So I was always kind of the Chamorro people is what they're called. While I'm with Chamorros, I'm always kind of the Americanized Chamorro. Yeah. And when I was with my American family, I'm always the brown-skinned American. So it was always like, I'm a little bit of an outsider in both, and that was kind of a interesting way to experience both of those cultures. But yeah, I definitely feel a strong connection to the Chamorro culture. I wasn't really raised Catholic, but other than that, there's the food, there's the language. I grew up with the language; it's part of me. There's all kinds of like native indigenous beliefs, and I don't quite believe all of those things, but it's definitely influenced who I am, and it's really cool growing up a part of that.
Any one of those that like sticks out? Any of those kind of cool beliefs?
Yeah, well, they did this. I don't know if you heard of the show, something like Ghost Hunters or something like that they have in American TV. And they go around and try and investigate these different like ghost stories. So they did one on Guam, and it's about the native indigenous belief of our ancestors. We believe that when our ancestors die, their spirits still stay in nature. And so you can maybe find the banyan tree, for example, often is believed to be the home of some of our ancestors, but they're all over. I mean, if you go into the jungle, you have to like be very respectful because of our ancestors. And so the American show came in without any like sensitivity or knowledge of the context of any of that stuff, and they're just like, they believe that there's these ghosts in these trees and all these things, and it was hilarious and very offensive. But that was one of them, and they're called Tautamona. And you can, as you grow up, you hear all these stories about how the Tautamona appeared before a young child and led them into the forest. And the medicine person has to come and bless the kids so that they don't get cursed by that Tautamona and make sure that they show respect to them. And so it's very deeply entrenched belief is our belief in our ancestors or the Tatamona.
I really love that stuff. Like, I feel I moved away from a lot of that stuff in my 20s and just became very logical and everything.
Yeah.
But the more I kind of get into spiritual work, the more I enjoy those stories.
Yeah.
And the myths and kind of what they represent.
And I don't know much about the Maori culture, but I'm sure you grew up with a lot of that stuff around you too. They probably have their own version of a lot of that stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I was exposed to it in places, but where I came from in the south, it wasn't as strong as other parts of New Zealand. But I'm embarrassed that I don't know more about it, to be honest. But it's on my list to go and investigate more of that and kind of understand more about it.
Yeah, I'm sure that embarrassment is pretty common in not only in New Zealand, but I'm sure in a lot of places. Like, I should know more about this.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have a pretty good relationship with the Māori, like the European and the Māori thing is the native people of different countries. It's a pretty tumultuous thing around the world. But I think as far as they go, like our founding document is called the Treaty of Waitangi, and it's still very controversial. But that's the document that was signed between the Europeans and the Māori, and it's still the document that we use today. So we don't have a New Zealand Day, we have a Waitangi Day. That was the day the treaty was signed.
And there's a lot of respect for the native culture.
Yeah, there is. Like, you see it everywhere. I think it's still strange. Like, I don't want to say that it's perfect, because it depends who you talk to. But I think in terms of, if you compared us to the rest of the world,
sure,
we're doing okay. That side of things.
Not as grievous as some places.
No, that's right. Like, we have a Māori party that's represented in Parliament, and so it's okay.
Yeah,
it's definitely on my list to learn more about it. But I find it interesting, just even those myths and stuff, and like, blessing the children and everything. Even if it's completely placebo, I still think it's valuable. I was just reading something yesterday that said, like, with any medicine, with any traditional medicine, any medicine at all, 30% of the recovery is still placebo effect. You're taking medicine. And so I think, like, when we look at that native culture and myths and beliefs and stuff like that, even if it just sounds like rubbish, like, buying into it and believing it and living it in the ceremony can have a huge impact on you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think just even the stories and these beliefs just kind of tie people together, and they bond people as a tribe in a way. I think that it's fairly powerful, and I think that's not a bad thing to be bound together.
Yeah.
I mean, it can, of course, have harmful effects. I'm not saying religion has always been good in the history of humankind, but I like the idea of being bound together by our shared beliefs and stories, even the medicine, these spiritual medicine things. And I think sometimes, even if you don't fully believe in, the power of these, the spiritual power of these things, they do have very symbolic meanings. And again, those things tie us together. I like that feeling of belonging, of just sharing those things.
Yeah, me too. I think that's one thing that, there's kind of a anti-religion movement, out there the last few years. And definitely in New Zealand, like, organised religion is not that strong a part of the culture. But I think what we lose is that community feeling, like that idea of, like, coming together on a Sunday and just being together and sharing wisdom. And something about that I love. We've gone to this really independent culture where it's just us, and we build walls around our houses, and it's like, stay out of my personal space, and it's just all about us and all about, being on our own. And you can tell, like, a lot of people I talk to, like, I can see a big part of what's missing for them is community, like, whatever version of that is. But I think as we've moved away from religion, we've lost that coming together community piece. Yeah, and that was one of the things. Actually, I left Guam partly to escape from a lot of the religious stuff. It was just like, you don't have to believe in it, but you're kind of obligated to go to all of these religious events, from like baptisms and christenings to weddings to all of these different things. And it can be a little bit
oppressive at times and just feel like, okay, there's so many obligations. But yeah, when you get free of that, there's also the freedom from not being together with your family and friends. And then you do feel that loss, I think. And so I think, yeah, society can, at least in Guam, you can drift towards that more isolationist thing. And I think you can really feel it. It affects our happiness and our bonds together, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Do you think you'll ever go back there, like, as a live?
Yeah, I just went back for my wife's father's funeral in December, and we stayed for like a month and a half. And I got in the ocean. And the ocean there is like I don't know if you do Fahrenheit, but it's in like 83 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's just like warm bath water.
Yeah. And
I'm just floating in the ocean, and I'm like, this is where I belong. Why have I left this place, you know? Yeah. So one of my dreams now is to buy a house on the beach, or build a house on the beach near Guam. And I don't know if I'll live there 12 months out of the year, but definitely have that be a home base to come back to.
Yeah, beautiful. So take me through the rest of the story. So you when do you leave Guam, and what happens from there?
Yeah, well, I had actually grown up in San Francisco in the Bay Area when I was a teenager, just for during my early teenager years, and then we went back to Guam. So I fell in love with the Bay Area and always wanted to go back, and I never really had the chance. And then finally, I made it happen, and we moved our whole family over, and it was actually a very traumatic thing, pulling us, all the kids, out of their roots. It's like almost felt like you're really pulling roots out of the ground.
How many of you were there?
So there's 6 of us. Me and my wife plus 6 kids. So it's 3 boys, 3 girls, and it ranged in that time from like high school age down to like a 4-year-old, right. Or a 3-year-old, something like that. And so, when we left the airport on Guam, a lot of the family came to see us off, and it was this horrific scene of people just crying, like we were crying, like sobbing going onto the plane. I'm like, this is horrible. What have I done? And the kids, really missed Guam when we got there, and they felt just totally out of place in San Francisco. We didn't have a car. We decided just to walk and use mass transit, which was a good thing for us, but that was another part of this whole culture shock. They had never seen homeless people really before, or drug users or any of that stuff. And so very big culture shock. We didn't know what central heating was because we didn't need it on Guam. And so I didn't know to turn that on the first night, and we were freezing. And then till the morning, I'm like, oh, maybe I should turn this on. So it was quite a transition, but we actually grew to love San Francisco, and just California in general. I've now fallen in love with the Sierra Nevada mountains, which are just gorgeous. And so, we've come to love this place, but it was quite a transition.
Did you have any thoughts about going back, like in that first few days, first week, where you're like, man, we could get on the plane, like we could be on the 9 o'clock flight, like let's just pack up and go?
I'm very stubborn, so I imagine I have the same spirit as in the U.S. the pioneers who decided to come west, and they're like, I'm making a farm here, and I'm making this work even in the harshest conditions. Like we're not going back. That was kind of mine, and the kids probably would have loved to have flown back the next day. So I had to kind of convince them and make it fun for them. And we walked all over San Francisco on adventures, and just really found the beauty of the place. And I had to help show them that. And that was kind of my challenge as a father. Yeah,
that's interesting. Is there any other advice you'd give? Like, I know this is if you want to move up and move to somewhere that's like to live your dream life, or to do that and take the family, like that's a big call for a lot of people. What helped you and what hindered you during that move?
Yeah. Well, it did help that we had some family members nearby. They weren't as many, and we weren't as close to them, but we definitely tried to make that connection, just to not feel completely alone. And then I tried to very quickly make personal friends for me and Eva, and we felt like we had some connections there. For the kids, it was great because we just had kind of a built-in tribe, And so we went and did everything together. And For us, it was just trying to make it fun for the kids. Again, we had been trying to have this idea of them embracing a sense of adventure. And this whole life was part of that. It was just like, okay, let's make this work, and sometimes that means like learning how to deal with cold, which they had never dealt with before. And it's just like finding our way through a strange city and just exploring it on foot and just not knowing where we're going and just kind of seeing what we can discover. That was, to me, one of the best things that we taught them. And I think they still have that to this day.
That's awesome. That's such a gift. I've been talking to a few people this week, and a common theme for some reason this week was people with kids just feeling stuck, bored and sitting at home and going through the motions. And they feel like they have this adventurous spirit in them, but they have to kind of just stay at home and look at the kids. But it's when you're talking, it's like, man, why can't you? What are you modeling for your kids? Model adventure, model uncertainty. Like how can you do that?
No, yeah, uncertainty was actually one of the big reasons we moved to San Francisco. Was I felt like we were in our comfort zone in Guam, and I was like, well, like we know everything is like this, and it's just set, and I didn't want them to get stuck there. And so I wanted us as a family, but also them individually and me personally, to push ourselves into discomfort and uncertainty. And that way back then in 2010 was a big thing for me, and it still is. It's actually, I talked to you about this before, but that's part of my big mission now. So I definitely want to model that for the kids. It's like, let's push ourselves. We don't know anybody. I mean, barely anybody. We don't know anything about the city. Let's push ourselves into that discomfort and the uncertainty of whether we could survive in this new place, of how to deal with all of this, whether this was the right move for us. We totally didn't know the answers to any of that. And as a father, that was a big, scary thing for me. And that was actually what I wanted, was to feel that fear and have to deal with that personally. And the kids as well. I mean, they're going to have to deal with uncertainty at some point. And I think as parents, we have this instinct to try and put them in this cocoon, this comfort zone, and not have them face fear, uncertainty, discomfort, any of that stuff. As long as we could protect them. But eventually they're going to have to go out of the womb, and face that. And at that point, having expected comfort for their entire lives, to face discomfort as adults will be like very jarring, I think. And it'll be like, well, the world's not supposed to be like this. And like, what's wrong with the world if it's, causing me this discomfort? And so I would rather be there with them early and help them to deal with it. Learn, and they'll have those tools later to deal with it on their own. But they've faced it with me in a more comfortable situation, and then they can do it on their own.
Yeah, it's beautiful because you end up creating more humans that are just desperate for comfort. That are uncomfortable being uncomfortable, and so just trying to find stability and comfort, which is not really, well, I believe, not really what the world needs more of.
I actually think it's the source of most of our problems. Is that looking for comfort and trying to get away from discomfort. And because discomfort and uncertainty are just a given in life, they're like the basic, that's just, what life is. You have no certainty ever. And for a while, we might fool ourselves into thinking that we do have certainty. We set up our routines. We have all of our opinions and our comfort zone, but eventually you're going to face uncertainty and discomfort, and you're going to want to run from it. You're not going to want that. And I think for me, that's what I was stuck in for a long time. That's actually how I ended up starting Zen Habits. Was I started to learn to get out of the comfort zone because it had been causing me so many problems. I was like overweight. I think I told you a little bit about my story, but I was overweight. I was deeply in debt, just couldn't get any habits right. I couldn't get exercise. I couldn't start eating right. I couldn't turn anything around because I was always trying to push off the discomfort of facing all of my problems, of exercise, of waking up early and writing the book that I had always wanted to write. And so I pushed off that discomfort and just procrastinated, trying to stay in comfort and run away from discomfort. But it wasn't until I learned to reverse that and embrace the discomfort that I actually started to change my life for the better.
I love this. That's really beautiful. And I learned this recently about myself. Well, about human nature, really, that we need certainty. Like, that's a human need. Like, we need to know there's a roof over our head every night. and we need to know there's going to be an income coming in. Like, it's nice to have certainty.
Sure.
But we don't usually talk about that uncertainty is actually a need as well. Like, you need some level of uncertainty. If you just knew everything that was going to happen all the time, every day, like, life would be so boring, right? You need some uncertainty. That's why people bungee jump and they skydive and stuff. It's because they want the uncertainty of, like, man, I could die here. You know, they like that uncertainty. Yeah, and I think a lot of the times when people say, oh, I just want to be more adventurous or I want to have a more exciting life, what they're saying is, I want more uncertainty in my life. How can I find more uncertainty? So
how do you push yourself into uncertainty?
Well, one of my favorite things to do, I've done it a couple of times in the last year, is my partner and I we'll have a week off and we'll just drive out to the airport and we'll just look at the departures board and we'll go like, right, what is it? Like, where are we going? Is it Bali? There's a flight to we could almost make that flight to Munich. Should we do that? Oh, okay. And then we'll just
So what are some of the places you picked?
The last one we did was Portugal. So we got, was Lisbon. Man. Yeah, so we were at the airport and we were just staring at the board and it was like, there was a flight to Zurich and then there was Italy and we'd both kind of been to Italy. And then it was like, oh, Portugal. Cool, let's just jump on that. And so within an hour we were on a flight to Lisbon. And we turned up at the airport. We arrived at like 5 p.m. We sat in the bar at the airport and had a Heineken and just kind of tried to find a place to stay that night. And man, like, so much fun, so much fun. But it was intentional.
One of the interesting things about that is you are an experienced world traveler, so you have a little more comfort with that level of uncertainty.
I think that's the problem, right? Like, I think out of travel, like, you want to find some, like, that's one fun part of travel is discomfort. We probably wouldn't say that, but it's like arriving in a place and looking around and being like, whoa, we're not in Kansas anymore. And so I had lost that a little bit from traveling so much. I feel like you could plonk me anywhere in the world and I'll figure it out.
Be fine.
Yeah, so it was kind of a way to re-energize travel for me as well.
That's cool. I would like to plan a trip for you where I can make you really uncomfortable.
Yeah. What do you think?
That could be fun. I don't know. I'd have to see what happens if everything goes sideways. See how you deal with it. It would be fun to watch just because I think you'd probably be pretty good at dealing with it, but maybe give you a little bit of adrenaline, you know?
Yeah, I think you're onto something because I think, like I say, you could drop me anywhere and I think that's what the iPhone's given us, right? Is like, okay, I'm going to go to hotels.com app, and then I'm going to go to the Uber app, and then I'm going to rent a car off Kayak, and within an hour, I'm comfortable again. So if you stripped that would be the way. If you took my phone off me and said, right, go somewhere and figure it out, that would be a new level for me.
I would like to take your phone away, and then I would like something to go horribly wrong, like maybe
it's very sadistic.
Yeah, we simulate like a bomb going off in the hotel nearby. And
Can you organize that?
Well, no, I've ruined that one. But
come up with a new one. Yeah, it's cool, man. I love that. Like, I love uncertainty. I love discomfort, but yeah, it's still new for me. So how do you do it now? Like, how do you make sure you're still pushing through the comfort?
Well, one of the things I realized as I started creating habits for myself is I created these routines. It was all ways to get certainty in my life. And so it was always like, okay, if I wake up, I do this, 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 and this, and I have like a structure to my day, you know? And I would like declutter everything so that I have like control over my life. So there's control and certainty. And I found that is completely an illusion. Like I think I'm getting some certainty, and then again, like I said, everything can go sideways, and you don't have your routines at this point. You don't have anything to hold on to, and so at that point, I think that's actually the place where we need to be, is just in some place of complete uncertainty. I'm not saying you need to be that way every minute of the day, every day, but we need to put ourselves into that. It's just put ourselves in completely like for some people that would be putting yourself into a room with a bunch of strangers and having to talk to them. For other people, it would be, I've had friends who were in the pickup game. So they had to when you first start, you have to like go up to women and just like completely get rejected a bunch of times. And, you could say whatever you want about pickup artists, but that is actually a brilliant thing, is pushing yourself into that uncertainty And after a while, that becomes more and more comfortable. Like you're fine traveling the world. Then you have to find something else. And so, yeah, one of the things I'm doing is trying to not get so stuck in my routines and be a little more free flowing. Travel is a big one for me. When I travel, I usually try and research everything and plan it all out. And so I'm trying to do a lot less of that. But going into uncomfortable situations, I went to an event with you, actually. That's where we met. And that was an uncomfortable thing for me. I had to get up and talk to a group a couple times. I had to just completely play full out with a bunch of people who I felt like you guys already knew what you were doing, and I didn't know anything, So
we're good at faking that.
Yeah, well, just kind of like allowing myself just to be foolish, like be the fool and not know what I'm doing. It's really good to be like the expert because, like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I tell everyone else. But when you come and you're completely the newbie, that's I think a good place to be. I mentioned going back to Guam when my wife's father died, and actually that was a really chaotic time for me. All my routines were out. I couldn't even do work because I was doing so much to try and support the family during this, and I was organizing everything. I was like the main organizer of a bunch of different events, just completely chaotic, stressful, busy. And as I was in the middle of that, I'm like, I'm so stressed out right now. This is actually my practice, is to be in the middle of this and be mindful and embrace it, be joyful, be grateful right in the middle of that chaos. So when I'm in the middle of that chaos, when I'm feeling stressed out and anxious, I try and drop into myself and say, okay, this is the practice, is to be here now and find that ground in the middle of the groundlessness.
And how does that look? That's like meditation, that's just breathing,
Yeah. So meditation is basically the practice for it, where you learn to like stay present with. I'm not. I hope I'm not preaching to the choir too much. You know the answers to all of these, but so you're not only staying with your breath, but you're learning to stay present with whatever is happening inside of you, whatever comes up, whether it's anxiety, anger, whatever. And so that's the practice. But then, you got to carry that off of the cushion and go into. So like when I was at the event with you, there were times when I had to be in an uncomfortable situation, and so I'm in the middle of that and I'm feeling it. And a lot of times what we do is we get stuck up in our heads, and whatever story is spinning around, like, oh, I don't want to do this, or all these people are judging me and all this stuff, right? We have a narrative going on. And so my practice is to notice when that's happening, and that's actually causing the anxiety, and just to drop down into the body and just notice what's going on. Like, oh, I'm feeling anxiety. What does that feel like? And it's completely groundless. It's like, you don't have any stability under you. And you're like free falling. I don't know what that's like for a pilot, but I just imagine, it's like, oh my God, this is, you're like trying to scramble for some kind of stability and you can't get it. And so now you just have to embrace that feeling of just completely being free falling. And because you can't actually grab onto the stability, and actually there's nothing to grab onto is what I'm trying to teach myself. And if you have nothing to grab onto, then you just have to relax into it and embrace it and go with whatever is happening. And that's a really challenging thing, but that's kind of what I'm trying to teach myself.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I get it. Before I record one of these podcasts, like about an hour before it all starts tuning up, and I'm like, oh, I sort of laugh at myself now because it's so on schedule every time. And I sort of drop in, and when I get down to it, it's like, oh, I really don't want to fuck this up. I don't want to get into this conversation and then we just have awkward silences. It doesn't go anywhere. You're sitting there scratching your head going, what's going on? And it's just an embarrassment. So I notice that's the feeling, and it sort of comes in here somewhere. And so I fully drop into it and I'm like, yeah, that's there. Great. What's the opposite of that? Well, let's just go and try and fuck this up completely. Like if I could fall in love with just making this an absolute mess, not know what I'm doing, it would be completely awkward, which is what I said to you at the start.
Yeah. Well, you haven't done it yet. You've fucked up fucking it up. So
I'm trying so hard. But that's my way.
So how did you learn to do that, to drop in the middle of that?
I guess I'm not sure is the answer, but it's probably trying to do it the other way not working. So for my whole life, whenever I felt fear or scared or uncertain, just pushing that and, or actually beating myself up for feeling it, going, oh God, like, why am I so nervous? This is just a conversation, like, just, I bet Tim Ferriss doesn't feel this when he's recording a podcast, like all the judgment.
It does.
Exactly. But all the judgment and the suffering, right, around that. So that wasn't working for me. That was just keeping me in the same place. And the bigger game the bigger the game that I keep playing, this feeling doesn't go away. It's not like the more you do, the more it just disappears. Yeah. So it was like, well, how can I make friends with it? It's not going anywhere. So how can I breathe through it, understand it, voice it,
So you're saying no one taught you this, or you didn't have any kind of practice?
I'm sure, like I read it in books and got coached around it, and I can't think of this is the one source that taught me this, but
right,
yeah, it definitely
through a number of all the different work that you've been doing with coaches and books and all that stuff. Yeah, because honestly, my experience is that most people are not taught that, and that is, like I said, that's one of the main problems that we have is we don't know how to deal with that uncertainty when it comes up. I think what causes you that every single time is you don't know how this call is going to go, right? And you don't know what I'm going to think of you and how stupid you're going to look and all this stuff.
Totally.
And there's no way to know that. It's absolutely impossible. And so because you're putting yourself in this place of uncertainty, you're going to feel that anxiety or whatever, dread. And most people don't know how to deal with it. You have a practice, which is, I think, brilliant. And if everyone had that, I think, the world would be a better place. We'd probably have less war, less people beating on each other.
Well, it's your reaction too, right? Like when you feel discomfort or when you feel challenged, like some people get angry. I know there's times when that would be my reaction.
Yep.
That would be anger, it'd be sadness, depression, whatever. So I think you're right. Something that just came to me.
We all have strategies. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, while you're talking, what came to me is like, the funny thing about doing the podcast is I love this. Like I'm having conversations with people like you, amazing people. I've always wanted to create a podcast. It's towards my mission. So it's not like I'm doing something that I hate. This is my highest joy and purpose. Yet an hour before it, I would do anything to get out of it. So I want people to get is like, it happens even when you're doing something you love.
Oh, absolutely. That's one thing I found too. Sometimes people, well, first of all, I think sometimes people have this ideal of what it's going to be like, this thing that they think they're going to love. Like, one is writing the great novel, right? Like, I'm going to write a novel. It's going to be brilliant. I'm going to be so good at it. And then when they sit down and write it, it's like they hate it because it's not exactly what they had idealized. So I think the ideals that we have about whatever we love can actually stand in the way, because it can be a huge disappointment when actually you can embrace the crappiness of writing or whatever it is you're doing. But yeah, I think that's the other thing is sometimes that joy that you have can actually be mixed in with fear and dread and uncertainty and all that stuff. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of people want to separate it out and say, oh, I wish I could get rid of the fear and just have the joy. But actually the two of them can be mixed together in one experience that is actually, I think, a beautiful thing. And I actually wrote a post on this where I mashed together two words, joy, fear. And so that's my word now is joy, fear. That's patent pending, by the way. So joy, fear, I realized this, like all my best moments in life were filled with both of those things. Like when I quit my job, and I know you just did recently, when I quit my job, I'm like, holy shit, I get to do what I love. And also, holy shit, I have to put food on the table and I don't know if I could do that. And so I was really afraid of that. Same thing when I had my kids. Every time they were born, I'm like holding this kid in my hand. And it's like so joyful. Like, oh my God, this thing is in my life that is so beautiful. And yet, oh my God, I have to take care of this fragile life and not let it die, So it's that sense of responsibility is just like crazy. So all my best moments have that, and like moments like now, if it's not mixed with those two things, I'm like, maybe I'm not doing something right,
Yeah,
it was too comfortable,
Yeah, that becomes a guiding feeling, right?
Yeah. So what have been your moments of joy, fear, just out of curiosity?
That's a good question. I felt like what came up straight away was just anything to do with my boyfriend, you know, like, or saying I love you, or leaning into commitment. You know, commitment's been a scary thing for me through my 20s. And so leaning into that, it's like, oh, I love you and I want to spend more time with you, and please don't hurt me. And wanting to completely run away in that moment. You know, like,
just opening your heart to anybody, right? Is that vulnerability. And yet if we don't do that, then we can't actually connect and love people. But it's such a scary thing, right?
It's such a scary thing. And there's a common thing, like, you're one of the top personal development authors in the world, right? And there's this thing in the personal development industry. I'm not sure if people say this, but I think this is what's felt. You should be happy all the time. Once you get through your journey, and once you've read one more book, it's always one more book. It's not the book you're reading, it's the next one. Once you finish that one, then that's it. Like, you would have found the cure to ending suffering, ending struggle, as you call it, and just being happy.
Yeah.
So you would
say
that
never happens.
It never happens, right? It never gets there. So then you get this thing where it's like, man, I'm doing all this work, I'm meditating, I still feel shitty, I still get nervous, I still feel fear, I'm not that happy that often. Man, maybe I'm just fundamentally flawed. Maybe I'm broken.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah. So then you double down on it.
Yeah, and that just I found that actually to be really common, is how people are have this fundamental dissatisfaction with themselves. And actually, everyone that I've talked to will admit to that at some point. It'll be like, yeah, I'm really unhappy with something, like my body. I'm unhappy because I procrastinate so much, or I'm not doing the thing that I love, like Nathan and Leo are. It's like there's always some reason. Like, I found even like the most beautiful people in the world, the first thing that they'll find is the flaw. Like, oh my God, I have wrinkles now right here. I was like, oh my God, you're missing out on all the beauty.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, that dissatisfaction with ourselves is so basic and common. But yeah, it comes from, I think, what you were talking about.
I was just watching Alan Watts' video yesterday. Because something came to me that he said, and I was looking it up for one of my clients. And he was saying, like, we kind of feel fundamentally flawed, but we don't really know what the flaw is or why. And he was saying it's like when you get arrested and by the police, you know, we've all been there. When you get arrested by the police and they say, you say, what have I done? And they go, you know what you've done. And you go, but what, you can't just arrest me. Like, what's the charge? I think you know what you've done wrong, and you can think about it, you know, but it's so bad that we're not even going to mention it. We don't even like talking about what you've done. Get in the car. And it's like, that's how we live our life, through this feeling of fundamentally flawed, but we're not really sure why we're flawed or what it is. We just know that we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's actually, that's one thing that I discovered. I try and teach people how to change their habits, right? So I've coached people, I've had habit courses, and I try and I say, well, do steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, and boom, you have a new habit. And they'll be like, okay. They're like so excited, and they do steps 1 and 2, and then they fall off, and they're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And actually, that's something wrong with that belief that there's something wrong with them is what caused them to not do steps 3 and 4. Is they sabotage it. Maybe they messed up for some reason, and then they're just like, oh, that's just a confirmation of how sucky I am. I already believed it, and now, like, I messed up today. I didn't meditate like I planned to, and so, okay, I am just fundamentally like a shitbag, right? And so, like, you don't go and meditate the next day. When actually that would have solved the entire problem. Just get back on the horse, just meditate the next day. Would have been no problem at all. But you turned it into a huge problem because of this, like, confirmation, you know, of how bad you are.
Yeah, man, it's so huge, isn't it?
So how you must help people with this all the time. People have this problem. Like, what do you do to help people who have this feeling that there's something wrong with them?
Yeah, it's a common feeling. Like, what my people say to me is, I've got everything I've ever wanted, but I still feel empty. So it presents as an emptiness, or as I don't feel good. What happened? I got a nice house, so, you know, I got the wife I always wanted, I got kids, dream job, money's okay, but I just feel lost and empty. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
That's how it looks for me. Yeah, Well, one big thing is just it's starting the process. I'm trying to say this in a non-cheesy way, but it's to deeply fall in love with everything about yourself. And for me, that started as an affirmation that I didn't believe.
Okay.
So
what was it?
Yeah, like to deeply love everything about yourself means like, oh, I'm overweight. I would carry this little beer belly around with me. So, I got to love that. Okay, that's a part of myself, so I got to deeply love that. Okay.
The beer belly.
Yeah, I got to.
What was the affirmation that you would say to yourself?
I, Nathan, deeply love everything about myself. Yeah.
And did you have a practice of saying that every day, or
I still do.
At certain times?
Yeah, so I say it in the morning and the evening, and at some point during the day, I'll write it out, like doing lines at school. Like when you get in trouble.
You actually write it out on paper?
Yeah, I have like 30 affirmations, so I change them up, which one I write, but I say all of them as soon as I wake up in the morning. It's the first thing I do, because programming the subconscious is best when you're still half asleep and your conscious mind's not getting in the way. So, I think affirmations have got a bit of a bad rap. I think people kind of think, oh, that's stupid, or it doesn't work, or it's like sitting in your home wishing you had a Ferrari. But for me, it was about fundamentally...
Well, you're retraining yourself.
Yeah, and it's being the person. It's actually not creating something fake. It's actually reminding myself who I am. The conditioning has been everything but that. The condition is being, you're not enough unless you have six-pack abs. Don't deeply love yourself until you're successful. Have you found your purpose yet? Don't love yourself until you've got a purpose. That's been the conditioning for me for whatever reason. So it's actually reminding myself, I deeply love everything about myself. Every day I'm getting better. I'm enough right now. When I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing I am, is enough. Before I do anything during the day, I'm enough. That's true, but I forgot. So so that's my practice. And it's amazing. It just, as it goes into the subconscious, slowly and slowly you can settle down and relax more into, I don't know what you relax into, but you relax more.
And that's actually one of the keys I found, is just being able to relax into whatever you're experiencing right now. So I think you hit on it there. It's like we often are resisting something, whatever it is in our experience, we don't like it. And we think, like you talked about, maybe after I read this one book, after I, do this next thing, then I'll have happiness. Because we're unhappy with this moment right now, including ourselves. We talked about that dissatisfaction, but also just something in our experience. Could be like however this other person is being. Like, I don't like that right now, or it could be the way that I'm being, or it could be just like something, I'm cold, or, some kind of discomfort, some kind of uncertainty, some kind of like just dissatisfaction with your life, with your kids, with not being able to travel, not doing the things that you love. And so, like, for me, it's just relaxing into the experience that you're having right now is, I think, really a key thing. It's just, okay, this is my experience right now. And, I can wish for a different experience, but that's not what life has given me. And actually, if you relax into it, you can find, some beauty in it, and something to be grateful for. Like I've been out in nature, and we're like, oh my God, it's cold and I don't like it. I want to get into a warm house, right? And again, I'm from an island, so I don't deal well with cold. So like I'm cold, and then I'm like, okay, let's just relax and just feel the cold. And actually, I'm like, I get to feel cold. Like, how fucking amazing is that, right? Like I'm alive. I have like senses. I'm in the middle of incredible nature. And if I didn't get to feel cold, if I didn't feel cold, I wouldn't be here. And just like finding something to appreciate. So just relaxing into the experience and just embracing all of it, even the crappy parts of it, but also the beauty of it. And in fact, the crappy parts can be beautiful too.
That's so beautiful. And also I struggle with that big time. Like, I just still find myself wandering off into the future, and I'm trying to get, I'm going somewhere. I'm getting somewhere. And I read, I'd like your opinion on this, but I read somewhere recently they were saying, like, because everyone goes, oh, you just have to be more present. You just have to enjoy the moment. You just have
easy,
to,
right?
Yeah, you just do it. And then I read something the last few days. It was like, becoming present and enjoying the moment will be the battle of your life. Like, that will be the fight of your life. like what's easy is to just stay in the future or dwell on the past or whatever. That's easy. You can do that without thinking, literally.
Yeah.
What will be the battle is waking up every day and like forcing yourself to live in that moment and finding ways to find joy.
Yeah. And when you mentioned like you struggle with that, and I mean, honestly, I do too. I don't want anyone to think like I'm like the most mindful, like Zen master in the world or anything. Like I struggle with it too. And then the practice there is relaxing into that struggle. Like, okay, I'm struggling with this. I'm not doing very well. I suck at it. And then just relaxing into that.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, it's always, for me, it's about catching whatever you're doing. And I'm very imperfect at that, but just like, okay, I'm really like struggling with this, or I'm really anxious about this, or I'm really dissatisfied with myself or something else, and just catching myself in the middle of that and then just relaxing into that. Because, I mean, I think a lot of it is just that story. It's like the story about what the future should be or what this should be. And you're just like caught up in that. And if you can just notice that you're getting caught up, and just like, okay, I see that, and I'm just going to like not be so much up here and just like relax into the current experience that I'm having. And some of it is just like relaxing into your anxiety. Like, okay, I'm feeling anxiety. Okay, what does that feel like? And embracing that, like just like you embrace your beer belly, just loving your own anxiety. And that's, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I think people have a really loving everything themselves or everything about their life right now, because that's not what we want. We wanted something else, right? We wanted a 6-pack abs or another life. It's tough stuff.
Yeah, it is tough stuff. The one I've been noticing lately is doing nothing. Like I really struggle with doing nothing. And I think part of it, it's the cell phone generation. There's always something to entertain. But I don't struggle to meditate. I meditate every morning. But it's kind of like that goes in the productivity box. It almost goes in like, like you're being, all you're doing is just sitting and being, but it's kind of doing, you're doing something, you're doing meditation.
Something good for yourself.
Totally, yeah. The thing I'm still working on, I want to get better at, is just putting the phone down, walking out the door and just having no agenda and just being. Like for me, that it sounds weird now that I've said it out loud, but that gives me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
So do you ever do that? Do you ever just spend time alone?
I actually struggle with it too. Yeah. I do it. And then what I find myself doing is like wanting to maximize that doing nothing. Like, okay, I'm going out for a walk. Okay. While I'm out there, I'm going to start making a checklist for this or planning this. Like I'm going to writing a post for my blog, like, okay, I'm out. And then, so for me, it's like catching myself doing that. And it's honestly such a strong mental habit. I think we're like in that way. It's just like finding something productive to do, even in our moments of doing nothing. Like I could be laying here and then I'm like, okay, what can I do here that's useful? And it's like, you're dissatisfied with the idea of not doing anything. It's not a productive thing, or it's not maximizing your life in some way. Yeah. So it's a tough mental habit to break, I think.
Yeah. Because I imagine you meditate, you don't find that struggle so much in meditation as well. You're the same as me, but it's like when you go out and there's no purpose.
I find the struggle in meditation too, honestly. Like I'll be sitting there in meditation and I'll be like, okay, I can actually use what I'm doing right now to like teach people about this. So like, okay, what am I learning right now? It's like trying to maximize that meditation time.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying I always do that, but I find myself with that tendency. It's a very strong tendency in me. Yeah. And so I think one question that I find interesting is, what if you never broke out of that tendency? Because you said that was something you would like to get better at. What if you didn't get better at that?
Oh, I love that, because it's like I'm asking the wrong question, right? It's like,
I'm just curious. I don't really know the answer to that.
No, I love it, because I love that. It just my question of going like, oh, how do I stop thinking when I'm doing nothing? It's like, well, that's the wrong question.
No, yeah.
Well, I like thinking about questions. Well, nothing would happen. Again, what if I could love that part of myself and just when I'm out walking go, oh, there I go thinking again, and here I am in this beautiful piece of nature, and I'm writing a blog post in my head. This classic.
Yeah.
I love it.
That actually brings me to an interesting thing that I've been trying to figure out about myself. And I'm wondering if you have any experience with this. Like, we think about these like, okay, I don't want to think these negative thoughts, or, there's lots of ways that we want to change our thoughts.
Yeah.
Meditation might be one of them, but it's like this idea that we can actually decide how we think. And I've been trying to examine that in meditation. It's just trying to understand, like, do I control my thoughts at all? Like, as if I have the next thought, it's like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? I didn't decide to think that. Like, where did the thought come from? And I have like no idea. And I think what I've been coming to the conclusion is like, I'm not actually in the driver's seat of my thinking. And that there's just my brain. I'm not saying it's like from a mystical place in the cosmic universe or something, but my brain just like generates thoughts without any control and without any like prompting. I mean, it's obviously there's stimulus that can prompt it, but like I didn't actually decide what stimulus to choose and where to go, what path to go from there, I don't know. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah. Yeah. What reminds me of is the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Really beautiful book.
I haven't read it.
I'll put a link in the notes. Yeah, worth a read. It's exactly about this. And he was saying like, the thoughts that come into your head, first of all, are not yours, right? That's like you're the observer that's experiencing the thoughts. That's kind of the basis of it. So the thoughts are just coming from all over, from all different things. And he was saying like, your thoughts, they don't have the solution. They will argue both sides. Like, so your thought will be like, oh man, we should go and get pizza. And then your next thought is, we can't get pizza. You got a beer belly. Like, you're fat. Come on, don't get pizza. But I'm so hungry and there's nothing in the fridge. So if you actually voice this stuff, or if you actually imagine two people sitting in a cafe going through this conversation, you would look at them like they're madmen. You'd be like, these people are just arguing back and forth all day about nothing. And that's kind of your thoughts, right? It's just like this back and forth discussion about nothing. Yeah. So, yeah, I think first just understanding exactly what you said. You're not in control of them. You're just observing them. So I heard someone describe it as like standing on the curb watching taxis go past, and the temptation is you want to get in a taxi and drive off in any direction. But you don't know where the taxi's going. So you jump in and the taxi just drives off and could take you anywhere.
Yeah.
And the goal is to, even though you want to go somewhere, is just to sit back and just observe the taxis going past. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
another interesting thing though is, so the thoughts, they just come from possibly nowhere. But actually, I mean, part of it is who we are. We've been conditioned through our lives to become this particular thinking machine, right? And also, it's the conditions that we're in right now, what we're surrounded by, right? So there's all the conditions around us that influence our thoughts. Like this conversation is influencing both of our thoughts, and anyone else who's listening or watching to it. And so like that, the thoughts are brought up from that, but also it's who we are through our childhood and, our coaching experiences and traveling experiences, all of the books we've read. Very, very complicated. So there's like this entire, all of these influences and all of the things that have happened in our lives have come together to form this particular thinking machine. And then the conditions that we're in, which we don't control at all. I mean, or not completely, at least. We don't control these conditions. They have all kind of conspired to produce these thoughts. And so like you said, we're watching the taxis go by, but like all of this has just been like incredibly influenced by everything around us. Every single person has created these thoughts. And I think that's actually one of the key like fundamental beliefs of Buddhism, which I'm starting to become more and more a believer in. But is the idea that we are actually not like we often think of ourselves as like this, human being who's like by himself or herself, and like I think these thoughts. I'm isolated from everybody else. You're thinking your thoughts, I'm thinking mine. But actually, the entire universe kind of, I mean, again, not in like a cosmic magic way, but just the way that things have happened to be, have created these thoughts or this person or this entity just through like just incredible amounts of influence. And just like a lot of it is randomness, but and what's the point of all of that? Well, actually, the point that of all of that
it must have a point. It must have a point.
It has to be.
You can't just speak
Otherwise,
openly without a point.
Yes. We have to have a purpose to everything. Come on. Otherwise, we're not being productive.
That's right.
So the point of all of that is that we are actually connected to every single person. We're not just an isolated island. We are actually part of a network of connections to everything around, every single object around us, every single event, every single person. We are kind of like co-creating each other. And in that way, you can't really say this is where Leo ends and where Nathan begins. It's actually, we are enmeshed in each other's lives right now. In fact, forevermore, like we'll never, ever be able to say, this is Leo and this is Nathan. We're like just inseparably, like, just enmeshed together. So, and I think that's true of every single person who influences you and every single person who's influenced them. I mean, that book that you read, every single person that influenced that author has now influenced you. And it's just like, we're actually all connected in like incredible, like unfathomable ways. And I actually find something really beautiful in that.
Mind blowing, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to lead us down that weird tangent, but that thought just randomly came up.
Thank you. Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I get the irony of the fact that I think about this a lot. But I think that the distinction I've made for myself as well is knowing that whatever's generating the thoughts in my head is like the problem solver. That's like the computer. That's the calculator. And the thing with a calculator, you got to put in the right numbers, right? You don't just say, "Oh, calculator, like tell me what we're doing." The calculator goes, "Well, that's not my job. I just give me a problem and I'll solve it." We sit there asking the calculator like what we should do, and so like we're just following all these random thoughts. So like, if you go and solve a problem, then thoughts are incredibly helpful, because they you give it a problem to solve and it will solve it.
Sure.
But the problem becomes when we turn over the control to the thoughts and go, okay, well, you tell me what to do. And it's like, well, go and get a pizza. No, that'll make us fat. And it just end up in this very stressful experience when you let control and stop being the observer of the thoughts and become the thoughts. Yeah,
which is, I think, our mental default is just to like be like completely immersed in it and not really not step back and say, okay, well, it's just, am I asking the right questions? Am I giving it the right inputs?
Yeah. Because you can control it, right? Like that's the idea behind meditation and affirmations, like saying I deeply love myself. I'm trying to control my experience, or I'm trying to influence so that the good thoughts come out, the thoughts that make me feel good, the thoughts that make me more purposeful. We do it in flying, right? Like we train in flying for hours and hours and hours in simulators, and we train for the worst possible scenario, which is most of the time is if an engine explodes just as the airplane's about to lift off. So that's the worst. Yeah, kind of, right? Like it's the worst possible time, and you have this decision to make in the split second. Do I stop or do I continue taking off? So yeah, we train for that over and over and over, so that if that happens in real life, the average person would go, scream, and their thoughts would run wild and fear and everything. But if it happens to us, we go, oh, yeah, I've done this a million times. Like I know exactly what to do here. Still a little bit of fear, of course, but much more controlled. So I think that's the way to.
Is there mental training then?
It's mental training, and it's controlling your experience, so you can have the best experience in that moment.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just launched a free training program my 44th birthday, and I call it the 44 training program.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's 40.
Amazing.
It's 44 days, and it's actually kind of like what you're talking about is just this mental training. And a lot of it is meditation, but a lot of it is also just pushing ourselves into uncertainty, pushing ourselves into discomfort, and learning just to train ourselves to how do you react to that? Do we try and run away from it, or can we sit in the middle of it and embrace it and find joy and gratitude in the middle of it, be mindful to drop into our body like you and I had talked about? All of these things, like, that happens to us every day, and we already have mental training. We're already like reacting in panic when the engine explodes, So like if we could just put ourselves into the flight simulator of meditation and all of this kind of training, we can actually say, okay, I'm in the middle of uncertainty. I'm feeling anxiety before a podcast interview or conversation. And like, how do you react when that happens? And actually that, like I said, that happens all the time. And we've trained ourselves actually since childhood. Like we have lots of training of how to deal with that. And it doesn't go very well for us usually. So we can retrain ourselves, I think, just by putting ourselves consciously and deliberately into those kinds of situations and just doing it over and over. I think exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, beautiful. That course is free, and there was a little FAQ below the course, and you said like, is Leo going to sell me something at some point during this course? And you're like, no, this is yours. I'm just giving this away. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that's the fear when you try and sign up for a free thing. It's like always there's an upsell, and like I'm totally not trying to upsell anyone. So yeah, I just wanted to like leave them with that worry.
My brother said that to me the other day. He's like, you got to just tiptoe through the internet so cautiously, because you put your email into one thing and suddenly you're getting 400 emails a week. So you mentioned the blog. Like I know you don't like talking about like how many users and stuff, but zenhabits.net. It's been one of the top 10 blogs from Time Magazine. How many users does it have at the moment? How many readers?
I honestly don't know.
Cool.
I know the number of like email and other subscribers are in the hundreds of thousands, but I also know there's people who don't subscribe and they just visit. So altogether, I guesstimate in like over 1 million, but I don't really know. Yeah, I stopped counting stats because I found myself, it's again the training your mind. I found stats training my mind to like care about the stats and like check them so often and like find some affirmation in like, oh, I'm getting a lot of visitors today. So yeah, I removed that. I'm like, okay, that's not the mental training that I want.
Yeah.
And there's actually a bunch of things like that I'm like, okay, got to stop doing that. If I'm checking this too often, that is not a healthy thing. So I removed that. So yeah, I don't know.
That's so
but
cool.
A lot.
I remember, a lot.
I mean, honestly, one thing I want to say about that is like the exact number doesn't matter, but it is so many that for me, it is staggering because like, I'm just another guy like you or anyone else watching. I mean, not as good as you, obviously, but another person. And I'm putting out my random thoughts into the world and hopefully they're helpful. And people have found that to be enough, like good enough to want to like follow me and subscribe and all of that. And so like, I feel so grateful to be able to do that and that people have responded in that way. And I feel so supported by all of these like thousands of people. Just like how amazing is that? I just get to be just held up by them. I don't know. I feel incredible gratitude for that. I'm not saying that like just because I should, but I actually really do feel that, and I find it amazing. So anyway.
Yeah, I feel it from you. I remember I signed up to Zen Habits like a long time ago. Like, how long have you been doing it?
Over 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, 2007. Yeah, that would be about right. Actually, I remember going on to Zen Habits. Like, it must have been in the early days when you were just starting doing it. But now, like, you pump out a huge amount of content. Like, how many blog posts do you do?
Actually, lately it's been a little less than normal. It was like once a week, but sometimes twice a week.
Yeah.
And then actually the thing that I do more often is now I'm doing video courses for a membership program that I have, and then and that free video thing as well. So I'm spending a lot of my time on that. And the other thing I think I told you guys about is I'm starting to hold live retreats, which I'm really excited about because I'm like pushing myself out of my comfort zone to like be in person with people and lead them through a lot of this kind of training in person, which is a scary thing for me, actually. I'm a writer and I'm used to being behind a computer screen. And it's like, now I have to actually talk to people. That's crazy.
Yeah, a good way to be uncomfortable. So how I'm interested about that, because you developed this blog. I'm sure you wanted it to be successful, but you never knew how successful it would be. But you get to this point where it's really taken off. You love it. You love writing. You love sharing. It's everything you love to do. And then it seems like you're at this transition point, right, where it's like, what next?
Yeah.
So how's that been?
Yeah, and that's actually, I've been doing it for 10 years, and after a while, you just like, okay, I can do this. I know how to do it. It's like I know how to travel. It's no problem. So I have to push myself into some new areas of uncertainty. So this year, that's what I'm doing, is just learning how to do this kind of thing. Is like, how do I take what I'm doing to the next level? And not only for myself personally and want to being in uncertainty, but also like writing a blog post is one thing, but actually leading someone through an event is so much more powerful. And I just discovered that last year. I can't believe I didn't know that before, but it's so obvious now. But it's just like, when you go to a live event with a bunch of other people, you're committing yourself to doing something, and you're connecting to other people and supporting each other through change. And you're actually, there's nowhere else to go but to do this stuff. Like usually you can just like, okay, I'll read that later. But to be there, it's such a powerful thing. So this is my way, I think a more powerful way of delivering my message and helping people and meeting my mission. So video was the next step after writing, and now in-person things is what I do next. I don't know what the next level is after that, so I'll let you know.
Yeah, you don't need to think about it. What's the mission that I know we spoke about it, and you've been kind of carving out the mission, the purpose. Yeah. What is it at the moment? What do you feel?
I think when I told it to you, I wanted it to be big and bold, because I've been helping people to deal with struggle. And the big and bold mission statement I had was to end human struggle. And you actually brought up a really good point in a question you had asked me, which was like, actually struggle has helped me to become the person that I am. And I wouldn't want it to not be in my life. And I actually believe that's really true. All my struggle has formed me into who I am. And I wouldn't want you to not have struggle, but we can use struggle for good, or it can also just beat us down into like submission, and we can be horribly happy, stressed, just like our lives can be in ruin because of struggle, or let it transform us. We can take struggle and see it as a source of learning, of challenge, and also of joy and gratitude. So that's what I want. And I haven't found a concise way of saying that yet, but I think it's transforming struggle into joy and gratitude is where I am right now.
Beautiful. Like that's it, isn't it? Like that's everything.
Yeah. And I actually think we're never going to get rid of it, and I wouldn't want to. And so how do we just use that raw material of struggle, uncertainty, and discomfort that is always going to come up for us every single day, and use that in a beautiful way, and also just embrace it, like you said, just fall in love with struggle and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Our I think mutual friend Toku was talking about running away from groundlessness or uncertainty, and he came up with his solution to that is he needs to find the deliciousness in groundlessness and uncertainty. And I love that. It's like just there is something delicious about it, but we normally want to run. That's just the human tendency. Is we want that certainty. Like you said, we need certainty in our lives. So like when we find uncertainty, we're like, okay, where's my certainty? But if we can just find the deliciousness in that uncertainty, we don't need to run anymore. And it just solves a lot of problems, and it saves a lot of struggle, I think.
Exactly. I feel like there'll be people listening that are like, nice story about uncertainty. Like, yeah, that was nice to listen to, and they're just sitting on the couch, or they're out walking, or they're on the train or on the bus.
Yeah.
But they're not convinced.
Yeah.
So what can someone do if someone's just feeling like, okay, I get it, I have to be uncertain, but I'll do that once I get more certainty or something like that. How can you, what's a step we can encourage people to take to get out of their comfort zone and feel that uncertainty and start to experience the deliciousness of not being grounded?
Well, the problem with that is it's a hard sell because groundlessness and uncertainty.
Literally the hardest sell.
Like, who the hell wants to put themselves in that, right? Like, it's way more fun to have the pizza and, sit on and watch Netflix or check your phone.
Sure. Way
easier, right? So what you have to do, I think what you need to do is understand what problems that causes. And I think we all realize it at some level. We see ourselves procrastinating, for example. Like, that becomes a major problem in our lives. And we're just going on all of our online distractions and never doing the thing we love, or, exercising, or whatever it is, writing the great novel that we want to write. Like, we're putting all of that amazing stuff off. And so procrastination is actually a huge problem. And so if we look at that, just that one problem alone, we can see all of the pain that it causes. If you also look at dissatisfaction with ourselves and our lives, dissatisfaction with our beer gut, belly, and everything else, like the sense of loneliness, those are actual real pain points. And if you can just pay more attention to those, we don't want to look at those. It's like when I used to be in financial problems, I used to shove my bills into the drawer because I didn't want to look at them. And that actually caused much more problems than if I had just looked at them. So we don't want to look at the pain in our lives. And actually, that's what we need to do in order to motivate ourselves to work with this stuff. So actually looking and seeing, okay, actually I'm causing myself all kinds of problems. And often we'll blame it on other people, but we cause ourselves all kinds of pain. We have anxiety in our lives, loneliness, we have depression, we have anger, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but they're real pain. And we have real pain about ourselves and just how bad we are. So if we can just look at that first and say, okay, this is real pain, and there is a way to deal with this, and there is a way to get to a better place, then that is, I think, when you're ready to start training. But you have to look at the hard stuff first. And actually, that's one of the problems, is people don't even want to think about it. It's like an app on your phone. The Facebook, for example, you open that app on your phone and it gives you something delightful, like, whoa, I get a message from someone, right? Or nice picture of my beautiful, niece or whatever. But if you had an app on your phone that every time it opens up, it reminds you of how crappy your life is, you probably would never open that app. It'd be like, okay, I'm gonna delete that app from my phone. Yeah. That's what I'm offering people, an app where you look at how much pain you have in your life. No one wants that. So
not a big seller.
No. So what I often do then is I disguise all of that crap with a nice layer of gold over it, and I just tell them you're going to find mindfulness and peace and joy in your life. So if I can sell them on that, mindfulness and peace and joy, maybe they'll actually look at the crap underneath. Maybe not the best way to describe it, but
I used to be a big yo-yo dieter, and when I was in a fat phase, just don't get on the scales. I would avoid the scales. When you're feeling skinny and when you're working out, you're on the scales all the time. Look at my progress. But if you don't see the number when you're putting on weight, then it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just a problem you can think about later, right?
Yeah,
it's another form of procrastination, I think. But it's just shoving your bills in a drawer, No, I'm the same way. Actually, I lost a bunch of weight myself, and I don't know what I was at my heaviest because I would never weigh myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know actually how much I lost. I have to guesstimate.
I want to ask you about your dark side in a minute, because we all love that question. But before that, people can go to zenhabits.net to read more about you. A couple of questions for you. So if I go onto Zen Habits, it's my first time, and I go to check it out, what do I do? Where should I go? How does it work? I know it's a very beautiful, simple website. It's pretty, but the 44-day video, how do I find that? Is that what you want people to check out at the moment? And do you have a retreat plan? Is there another retreat locked in that people can look at, apply for, or is it coming, or should they stay tuned? Or
those are good questions. So the first thing is, when you go to the site, there's only one article on the page, and I recommend you read that article. Whatever the current article is, it's the best one I've ever done.
I like it.
But also at the bottom, there's a link to the archives, and there's 1,000 posts there. So you can just kind of go through. There's also a link to the books page where you can read some of my books if you want to. You'll have to buy them, actually. But actually, I realized when you asked that question, I haven't put the 44 program on that page or anywhere defined. So I need to put that somewhere. maybe on the books page I'll put that. So that's where I would go if you want to like learn more. I don't have a specific retreat plan right now, but I am planning one in the fall. And I don't know when you might be listening to this podcast in 2019. So, but if you're listening to this in 2017, fall 2017, probably October, I'm thinking now of trying like a tropical location just because I love the tropics. So I might go to Costa Rica. Wow. But I want to go all over the world. So I want to go to like Europe. Tokyo would be amazing. Bali or New Zealand. So basically I want to take my retreat and do different versions of it and just kind of experiment with it and play around with people and fuck it up in all kinds of places around the world. Tropical locations to, Iceland and urban Tokyo. So that's kind of
it sounds amazing. How many people were on the first one? Was it
only 6?
Beautiful.
Which was a huge disappointment. No, actually, it was beautiful. It was like my first one, and it was only 6, very intimate and perfect because like I didn't really know what I was doing, and so just like if I didn't know what I was doing in front of like 50 people, that would be probably a disaster. But not knowing what I'm doing in front of 6, but they're very loving and forgiving people. So actually, it went beautifully. I was really blown away by how well it went, and people felt it changed their lives, and I felt a lot more confident in my abilities to meet people where they are and help them in some way in person.
That sounds awesome. Well, let me know when the next one is. I'd love to come on it and support you.
Well, for you, I'd have a special price, just 10 times the normal price.
That's fine. That's fine. It'd still be a deal. It would still be a steal.
I have to increase your commitment. If I make you pay, if you're too little, it would be good.
You have to make it uncomfortable for me now that you know my secrets. So final questions about the dark side. Every man has one. I'm really interested to hear what your version is, or what you even think about, what the dark side is, and how do you embrace it? Do you not embrace it? Is there a part of you don't like to acknowledge or talk about?
I like that you have it in singular, the dark side. There's only one. I actually have like many, many dark sides. I don't even know where to start with that question.
Go to the scariest one that you don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Everything I write about on my blog is, I talk about like I know what I'm talking about. And the really scary thing for me is for people to realize like how much I don't know what I'm talking about, and how many times I fail at exactly the advice that I'm giving. And so I just did one on self-discipline, and then following that up, I had one of the worst stretches of lack of self-discipline in my life. Just recently, like this past weekend, just totally could not, I got into like a funk and a slump and just did not know how to get out of it. And I'm now slowly getting out of it, but it's, I get into, like I talk about eating healthy, and during that funk, I was like just eating the worst, the worst diet, and just like drinking too much. And I was like, if people saw me with like the potato chips crumbling down my front and like beer dribbling down, it would probably not be a pretty sight. It would be really embarrassing. So don't tell anyone about that.
Oh, that's between you and I.
But also just like, I have really childish things about me when I get into, like, you talked about opening your heart and being vulnerable to your partner. Like, I do the same thing. I mean, I try and do the same thing. And then when in the slightest sign of them not being completely like open-hearted and loving, I will like shut down and like go into like childhood emotional patterns and just like, I don't know, like I don't need them, and just be really silly about things. And it's just, I mean, childlike can be a beautiful word, like childlike wonder and just like this childlike view of the world, but it can also be like childish and like emotionally insecure and not mature. So that I have those sides of me. I have a lot of insecurities and fears about myself. I have a hard time with all of that, honestly. The ways that I embrace it is I have a hard time. Like you talked about trying to love everything about yourself. That's a tough one for me. I just taught a course on it. Of course, I can talk about it all day long, but doing it is way harder. And so, yeah, I came from a place of a lot of pain about myself. That is why I got so overweight, why I got so bad into financial problems, is like, I just didn't want to deal with any of that. And I was trying to just like fill the emotional, painful hole in my heart with food and all the comforts in life. And of course, it just made me feel worse and worse about myself. So that I figured out that didn't work. And so I'm trying to like recover from that. But at the heart of that is still a lot of pain about myself and like not wanting to be seen, not wanting people to see like how inadequate I am. And I have built a lot of structures and, facades around me to make it look like I have my life together and that I'm this amazing person and I have 1 million readers and all of this thing. It looks great from the outside, but actually from the inside, it doesn't feel like that at all. So yeah, I would say that would be my dark side. I am trying to embrace it. It is a hard thing for me. That's actually one of the hardest things in my life, is to embrace it. But the way that I've worked with it that's worked is instead of trying to work with like how I see myself, and I think maybe the affirmations might be a cool way to deal with that. But instead of working with that kind of like overall picture, is I just work with individual moments. Like right now, I'm feeling crappy about myself, and then I investigate that with curiosity. Well, at my best of times. Most of the times I don't do it. But at my best of times, I'm like, okay, what does that feel like? What's going on there? And just try and like really embrace that experience. I'm experiencing something right now, and it's not necessarily the most pleasant, but I can just like, okay, this is my experience right now. And yeah, maybe I can wish someday of having like the perfect life, but actually right now is maybe the most important moment in the universe. And so if I can just right now just find something to love about this experience, even if it feels crappy, like what is the thing to love about that? And actually what I found, I don't know how much you want me to go into this. I might be answering way too long for you, but what I found is if I can go into that experience of loving the hurt, the hate, the anger, all of these dark sides of me, and all of the self-hatred, if I can just love that and I just really experience it, I find that actually underneath all of that is like this tender heart. It's almost like this like scared little kid, but it's I think of it as a tender heart, and that is like in pain right now. All of the chaos of the world has like been shooting daggers at it. It's in pain, and so there's the pain, but also underneath it is the tenderness. And that's actually a like really sweet, beautiful thing that we don't let ourselves see very often, And I think underneath that is just like what I've been learning is just this basic goodness, a basic awareness. The guy watching the taxi is like that awareness is not a cold awareness. Actually, it's a loving awareness. So I'm trying to like see that more. And again, those are in my best moments. In my dark moments, I don't do that at all.
Don't do that at all.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, the dark side, I find it fascinating. I mean, it's a complicated thing. Just to call it the dark side, it's a bit simple, but I can't remember. I was reading a book that said that the dark side, you either pretend you don't have one.
Yeah.
That's kind of pushing the bills in the drawer and just going, no, I'm all good. There's nothing wrong with me. And then eventually it comes up and destroys you in some way. There's the other side where you just like fully become your dark side, and it's like, when your wife's not playing ball, you're just like, well, fuck you. Like you just become that horrible person. You're like, this is me, this dark side's me.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not healthy either, right? Because it's not you. Or else there's that way where you can embrace it, where you can go, okay, there's this part of me. And the thing with the dark side, I think it's not always bad, right? We think it's bad, but it's only dark because it's in the shadows. It's not dark because it's... that's a really good point. The side that's in the light is just the side that we want to show. That's why it's in the light. There's just stuff that we keep in the dark because we don't like telling people about it, but it's not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
So embracing
we think of it as bad.
We think of it as bad, yeah. But it's
we tend to, yeah. We don't want it. I think
right.
usually.
keep it in the dark.
And to just another analogy is like, think of it as like a good friend. You know, like if you told that good friend, like, I want you in the closet, like I want you in the dark. I don't want to talk to you when things are bad, but I want to talk to you when you're happy and you're beautiful and, you know, everything is great about your life. Like, that would not be a good relationship, right? But if you just said, yeah, I love you for all of who you are, including your dark side, and, you know, everything about you, and just completely embrace that friend, and you're just there for that friend, even when they're hurting. That's a good friend, is when you're there when they're hurting, not only during the good times, right? Yeah. So like when we're hurting, when we have anger, if you can just be there for yourself during that time, that's when you start to develop that good relationship. But actually, most of us have a really bad relationship where we don't even want to acknowledge ourselves for having that. We like constantly shame ourselves for having it. It's that. I think that's one of the main problems, is just like not wanting it, not wanting to acknowledge it, and not wanting to have it in you in the first place. I also, that idea of not wanting to acknowledge the dark side, that was me for a really long time. I always spun things to the positive, like, oh yeah, I have this, but it's actually a positive thing. So I always try and look at the positive side of things. And I have friends who are still the same way. It's like they don't acknowledge that they ever have any difficult feelings. Because like, oh no, that wasn't a problem, that whatever I had, because, you know, all these good things. And I'm like, well, actually, I can acknowledge that I have difficult feelings. I have loneliness. I have anger. I have all of these, you know, things that you might say is bad, but actually it's just part of who I am, part of the human experience, part of life, right? So I have to just acknowledge that and just like be able to turn and face it and stay with it, instead of running away from it or hiding from it or like pushing it away or smacking it down. Just like stay with it, and then ideally, of course I'm not ideal, but ideally I can stay with it with a loving presence and just like be in the middle of my, whatever you want to call it, darkness, you know, anger, whatever, and just be there with it, which is a hard thing to learn how to do. It's like, again, training ourselves, right?
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah,
this is awesome. It's been a great conversation. Like, I loved, it's kind of a theme that's emerged out of it, right? Which is, yeah, I wouldn't have picked it. I think we failed in trying to screw this up. I really enjoyed it.
So we can just do it at the end?
Yeah, we can screw it up now.
Then we can just cut off the ending.
Yeah, and just stop. Leo, I'm so glad that we our paths crossed for whatever reason. It's, you know, been a real privilege getting to know you more, and it's been a privilege talking to you today, and thank you for being open and vulnerable, and taking us to some of the places that you don't normally talk about. It'll benefit a lot of people. So I appreciate that.
It's been a privilege for me too, and I want to acknowledge you for that too. You brought me along on this, you know, talking about these things, and I think I don't often get to talk about it. So you gave me that space, and I really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, man. Well, I hope you'll come back on the show soon, and Zen Habits is the website. Go and check it out. And thanks, Leo.
Thank you.
There you have it, folks. My conversation with the wonderful Leo Babauta. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. You can read more about Leo at his website, zenhabits.net. If you're interested in Leo's training program called the 44 Training Program he mentioned, which is turning uncertainty and discomfort into mindful openness, you can find that free course at zenhabits.net/the-44. So zenhabits.net/the-44, and you'll find that free course there. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'd appreciate if you could give us a little like on Facebook as you pass by. Share it around if you get a chance. And I'll see you next week for episode number 25 of The Nathan Seaward Show.
That was The Nathan Seaward Show. Personal conversations with powerful men.